have a memory and anniversary of leaving my home on December 31st, 2011, haphazardly in the middle of the night. And I would never come back to that home again. I would never come back to the tumultuous, the pain, the chaos, that trauma again. And boy, is that a hard feat. It is not easy for any of us. I would just run away. And I picked my outlet of running away as some sort of escapism, not wanting to deal with or sit in the suck of the darkness of AKA the winter blues. I'm your host, Dr. Neeta, and today we have a very powerful episode. It is Christmas, and today we are navigating big concepts like loneliness. It's not all cheery for everybody. Oftentimes, with the amount of layers and the possibilities of the people, the places, the circumstances, the patterns that tend to pile up one on top of the other, because for so long, we're just masking. We're masking our grief with the next thing to do and the next event and the next. I've probably been avoiding these feelings for a really long time, but what is it allowing me to do? Am I ready? The holidays can spark loneliness. And so what do we do? Hey loves, do me a quick favor and hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are tuning into this. It helps grow the show more than you know. Thank you so much again and enjoy. It is Christmas, and today we are navigating big concepts like loneliness. It's not all cheery for everybody. And before I start, I want to remind you of an affirmation that I've held so near and dear to my heart, especially around the end of the year, especially around when some people are feeling winter blues, holiday blues, loneliness, maybe even anxiety for going home, not wanting to go home. If that is you, I want to help you brave your emotions and your feelings today about it. And one thing that I want to, I've pulled for this episode from my That Suck Now What affirmation card deck is I deserve wonderful things. I am worthy of all the beautiful moments and things flowing into my life with ease. I am worthy. And this hits home for so many of us, because for so many years, when I was navigating a painful divorce, and of course it happened around the end of the year, and I know so many people who navigate change, either breakups, heartbreak, loss of any kind, grieving. Maybe you're an empty nester. Maybe this is the first year that your kids don't want to spend with you, or they are with their dad, or they are with other people in their life, or they've, left the coop and now this is the first time you are navigating alone, or there has been a big change, a transition. Maybe you've moved. The holidays can spark loneliness. And so what do we do? And if you are in that gap, in that season of change, I just want to honor you and I want to celebrate you. And today can bring up so many heavy feels. I remember for years after my divorce, I would just run away. And I picked my outlet of running away as some sort of escapism, and escapism of not wanting to deal with or sit in the suck of the darkness of AKA the winter blues, or the fact that for 11 months out of the year, you're so busy, you're running, you're moving so fast, and then all of a sudden, there is nothing to do. People have gone away, people have gone home to visit their families. Maybe going to visit the home that you grew up in brings up too many memories. Maybe you're trying to distance yourself from family, whatever it is. I know that for years, that would be my route. And while I love travel, it would still happen around the end of the year, where this was probably 2 to 3 years in the middle of my post-divorce, where I had to sit in the discomfort of the grief, and the grief that I did not allow myself to sit in because it was too uncomfortable. And I want to support you in really diving into ways that can help soothe you while you are going through this. And often, the other aspect of this is, what was your inner child needing? Meaning, what were the younger parts of you going through where if you find yourself feeling this way or feeling more alone, even if you are with family members, even if you are going to all the family parties, doing all of the things kind of like on a hamster wheel, checking off the boxes, but you are feeling disconnected either from the people or from the relatives, and perhaps maybe you are withdrawing, how to give that love back to yourself so that you actually can be more present with what is coming up to the surface. Because when we have stillness, when we have nothing to do, when our plate is completely empty, as it should be for the year end, we can actually take this as a blessing. We can actually take this as time to say, okay, I've probably been avoiding these feelings for a really long time, but what is it allowing me to do? Am I ready? So the question that you have to ask yourself is, am I ready to open up this chapter of myself that is messy, that's been chaotic, that has had some wounds? Maybe there are scabs still there, yet am I ready to heal through it? Am I ready to perhaps shift that meaning, feel those emotions, and then release it so that I can jump into the next year, 2025, with the most incredible, amazing energy and love and passion and adventure and memories and excitement and joy and maybe just peace, because I have been able to sit with all of the things that I have been avoiding for the past year or years. And boy, is that a hard feat. It is not easy for any of us. And I can recall that on years past, because I also have a memory and anniversary of leaving my home on December 31st. 2011, haphazardly in the middle of the night. And I would never come back to that home again. I would never come back to the tumultuous, the pain, the chaos, that trauma again. I would not be in that crippling fear again. And so for years after that, this was not only a void that I was also healing, but there were multiple layers to the little Neeta that had to grow up early, the little Neeta that had so many different responsibilities, the little Neeta that for years was working and working so hard until she ran into burnout, not once, not twice, but several times. And year-end reflections are so potent if we allow it. Yes, we can go through the holidays and all of the family events and all of the things to do and avoid feeling, because we would then be numbing, which is another form of escapism or not wanting to feel those big feelings. And currently right now I'm in Dubai, where there is an event or 2 or 3 or 5 every single day to keep myself and my kids busy. And with all of the hustle and bustle, the holiday markets, the night markets, the incredible things to do that can keep us busy for ends and hours upon ends, and the traffic and the meeting people, we have to also ask ourselves, when can I give myself the gift of letting it soak in? And for some of us, it could be cuddling in our blankets, cozying up, watching one of those rom-coms, the holiday rom-coms that are on Netflix right now, or any sort of Bollywood movie. Take your pick. Or maybe even think and imagine what your 2025 is going to look like. And I say this because I think oftentimes with the amount of layers and the possibilities of the people, the places, the circumstances, the patterns that tend to pile up one on top of the other, because for so long we're just masking. We're masking our grief with the next thing to do and the next event and the next to do, and piling on with all of the distractions, that those feelings never get a chance to come up and rise to the surface, to be met, to be seen, to be heard, to be felt, to be acknowledged, to be screamed, to cry and shed some tears, to allow ourselves to really feel what we have avoided, maybe for the whole year, maybe for years past. And I know what I know now, after having gone through the years of not wanting to feel, the years of wanting to travel place and place and place and place. And I have done that. This has been an entire month with my family. Some of you have probably been watching me and seeing my stories on social media with my family, lugging around my 2 small kids, my husband. Now currently my in-laws are with us here in Dubai. And we were traveling for a whole month. I was in the Philippines. We were also in Dubai earlier this month, and then India, 7 cities in India. And what I want to bring up is 3 essential tips that I've found over the years, and what I want to remind people every year as we kind of navigate this. And if you are new to watching me on YouTube, listening to me, or listening to me for the first time, maybe somebody shared this with you, feel free to notate this, write this down, pause this, and re-listen to this again. How can we nourish ourselves, our nervous system, the younger parts of ourselves that perhaps we've abandoned? And the first part is reconnect with your inner child, the younger version of yourself that maybe didn't get a choice, maybe wasn't allowed to play, wasn't allowed to go and be a kid, maybe had to grow up early. And as I'm sharing this, I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, that's me too. And I took my kids there was a Christmas market earlier this week that we went to, and there was another kind of gathering that we went to in one of the cities, Chandigarh in India. And it was all about play. It was at this rock garden. And if you've ever been to the rock garden, shout out rock garden in Chandigarh. The guy who created this was such a genius, because he used his imagination to create some of the, from the tiniest doors. So as an adult, and I'm pretty short, I'm 5, well, I would say I'm 5'2", but from the doors to it was almost like a maze going through this exhibit, and it was outdoors. And Chandigarh as a city is such a beautiful city. You must go visit if you've never been to India. And the way that it was planned and laid out, but it's known for their parks and a lot of nature, and it's kind of on the foothills of the Himalayas. So you can easily do a day trip into some of the higher elevated areas before you get to kind of the peaks in the mountainous regions of India, northern India. And this rock garden, I mean, the guy had to be connected to his inner child, because in one of the kind of sections, there were all tiny little dolls made out of rocks. And then another section, which was just waterfalls cascading down. It was just the most beautiful place. But going there with my kids, and of course some of our other friends, my kids were leading the pack. And they ignited the inner children in all of us to say, you know what? I thought we were just going to be here for 20 minutes, but actually we ended up spending a couple hours there. And the fact that each sculpture had its own story, and our kids were running around, but then we saw school children running around as well, it allowed us to connect back with the parts of ourself that didn't have an agenda, with the parts of ourself that maybe didn't ever have time to be present, or was so focused on going on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. So where can you go ahead and maybe make some angel snowflakes? If you're living in a cold climate, Or I know that I was earlier at a Christmas market here in Dubai, and my kids were making snow angels in the snow. And we actually did this last year as well when we were here in Dubai. And, I don't know if I'm calling it a tradition or a ritual, but just to see their faces. And I was like, why can't they let the adults in? Because I would totally want to do that. But allow yourself to connect with your inner child through play. And here's why it works. Play is a direct gateway to the younger parts of yourself, the parts of yourself that have been dismissed because you had to grow up, because you had to take all these responsibilities, because for so many parts of the year, you were on go, go, go mode, and you didn't allow yourself to give yourself a break. And often it's the part of us that feels neglected during those stressful periods. And I don't know about you, but the holidays are a time to be triggered. The holidays is going to be a time where it will trigger your childhood wounds, no matter what. Whether you were abandoned, whether you were left out, whether you had FOMO, whether you weren't allowed to do certain things, either you're passing it on to the next generation through your children, or you are neglecting yourself in the process by saying yes to too many things that stretch you thin. And I say this because I'm also seeing it real time. So many people here are like, hey, I want to meet, let's meet. And even myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. But in honoring my inner child, I also fell sick for a couple of days last week because we've been traveling for a whole month. And it's different traveling with a whole entourage like I'm doing now versus traveling back in the day when I just had a backpack and I would go from hotel to hotel or Airbnb to Airbnb, huts in different parts of the world. I mean, hostels, couch surfing, you name it. I've done it. And what I had learned, even when I was going through the thickness of exploring on my own and trying to find myself and perhaps even rediscover what lights me up, was connecting with my inner child, was actually allowing myself to maybe play within a new identity. And if you're not someone that is normally friendly in meeting people, but you're traveling right now, go ahead and introduce yourself to new people. Go ahead and go on those apps and swipe. Is it left or right? But maybe go first. Instead of waiting for somebody to invite you, you make the first move. Instead of waiting for a relative to connect with you, you go ahead and try to connect with them. And when we, number two, act from a place of curiosity. And when we are feeling low, I know that it's so hard to get out of our stuck. And we tend to ruminate on why things aren't going as well as they can. We tend to ruminate on maybe past woes or past situations and circumstances or the things that didn't go well all year. And it's easy to stay stuck in what sucked. However, what if we are curious about what we can expand into? So number two is, can we be curious about what we can expand into and practice that radical self-compassion and that compassion for the little girl or the little boy that didn't have a choice, that didn't know any better, that maybe trusted this person and this person took advantage of them, that maybe trusted their whole heart in saying, yes, this time it'll be different, but then maybe got betrayed in the process or got stifled in the process or got disappointed in the process. I know that also in traveling this year, one thing was for sure and certain. I had been navigating through certain attachments that I had with either certain people that I was excited to connect with coming back here to Dubai or coming back and visiting my mom's side of the family in the Philippines for a very long time. It had been 6 years that I had reconnected with my mom's sister and a lot of my cousins and their children. And I'm going to do a whole deep dive on that in a completely different episode, my visit back to the motherlands, to the Philippines. So That'll be coming out soon in 2025. But also how the attachments and the expectations, the subtle expectations that we place either on ourselves, either on the people that we love most, either on the people that we are the closest to, okay? This will never happen with a stranger. This will never happen with somebody you don't really care about. So, and this tends to happen and ignite more so during the holidays. And I noticed that I was attached to these particular threads and attachments that perhaps maybe activated the younger versions of myself that were not met, that were disappointed. And I had to go into a meditation and imagine my little girl who was 10 or 12, who didn't get invited to the party, or who was told one thing, but then found out, I was lied to, so I was betrayed. And I had to cut those cords. And when I mean by cutting those cords, energetically, I was imagining myself forgiving the people, situations, places, circumstances that perhaps subconsciously did this to me. And I was imagining something else. And I imagined that little Neeta at 10 or 12, just sending them love. Because if I could reimagine what that situation looked like when I was 10 or 12, that maybe now in my 40-plus-year-old body and mind and soul and spirit, that maybe it would be a different way of relating to other people and giving others the benefit of the doubt. Even if it's my kids, my own children, because we all know that they will trigger us. And wow, have I been just elevated into a whole new level with my children, traveling with them closely for the last month and losing things and having to go through meltdowns and situations and circumstances. But I had to practice that self-compassion. I had to practice getting curious with myself on, okay, how can I do it differently? What is my inner child needing? What does she need right now? Maybe she doesn't need to say yes to this thing. Maybe I'm going to have to disappoint this one person. Maybe I'm going to have to stay in tonight and say no because my little girl and my also little girl, my daughter, needs me. And I know that for us, a container, a family, this is important. But this whole practice of self-compassion and cutting cords and reimagining, what we're actually doing is we are cutting those cords of the past and we're refueling it with new neural pathways so that now going into the future, we are not going to attract those same types of people, those same types of circumstances, so those same types of situations, because we've already healed that in the past. Do you see where I'm going with this? And so this becomes so important when we are trying to nourish ourselves after feeling sucky or lonely or anxious or vulnerable. And you can try this for yourself. Bring to mind a situation that perhaps maybe you are healing from, or that's top of the mind, or maybe there is an attachment, a cord, a thread that you still have with a particular person, situation, circumstance. Maybe something you worked so hard on didn't go as planned. Maybe something that you have been wanting so badly, it didn't go into fruition. Maybe something that you were expecting from another person, they let you down in some way and you were so looking forward to it. Whatever the case, just imagine that. Now, bring to mind a time where that has happened in the past. How old were you? What age were you when this happened? Maybe it was a teenage version of yourself. Maybe it was a younger version of yourself, the little girl version of yourself, or a little boy. Who was that with? And imagine who, what, place, circumstance. And now I want you to envision what could have been done differently. Maybe giving that person the benefit and giving yourself the love and the well wishes that you yourself needed, that we didn't actually get, because now you can actually meet yourself in the process. And when we do this, this is such a liberating exercise, which is why it's one of my favorites, to bring back a sense of connection back to self. We are allowing ourselves to create new memories going forward. And so, third tip for when we are feeling lonely is, can we create our own micro moments connection with ourselves? What lights you up? Can you actually, if you are traveling to a different place or traveling with other people or traveling to a new space, or maybe just going to different relatives or family parties or festive events, maybe that you know someone or maybe you don't know, or you're meeting them for the first time, can you create micro moments of connection with another person, but still honoring yourself in the process? And here's how I would do this. If you are going to a family gathering for the first time, maybe you know somebody, maybe you're going as a plus one, maybe you're meeting the same people that you've met for 20 years, but you are different now. You have shifted in the process. You've changed in the process. Well, meet that person where they are at. Make it about them. Ask them and be curious about them while honoring your battery, while honoring what you need. And this can look like asking somebody questions, getting to know them, and then maybe perhaps excusing yourself from the conversation if it feels draining, if they are draining, if you are perhaps maybe complete with the conversation. Another example of this is perhaps deciding to go to an event, a family party, but maybe making it a point to leave early and not staying the whole time so you can honor yourself. And then maybe when getting home, you can light a candle, you can write yourself a note, you can pour yourself a cup of tea and put your hand over your heart and really honor the spaciousness that you've given yourself. And maybe, just maybe, you can perhaps, instead of creating all of these moments outward with other people, maybe you can just make a list of the books or shows, movies that you'd want to watch for yourself. And make this a romantic night out for you, but inward. So with all of your favorite things, maybe it's, setting the tone right with the lighting, have the lights dim, or having your favorite cup of tea with your journal out and journaling. What are your intentions for 2025? What are the 3 things that you are curious at wanting to accomplish? Who do you want to be in 2025? And who do you need to be for that person? In other words, if you are wanting to be more whole or more at peace, who do you need to be in order to cultivate the feeling of being more at inner peace? Maybe it's celebrating yourself. Maybe it's allowing yourself for more spaciousness and not to-dos or doing anything. Maybe celebrating doing nothing for once and slowing down could actually be a way to connect more with yourself. Oftentimes, I feel that a lot of you say, well, this gets me to like overeating, and I have this practice that this is how I give back to myself, or I have a lot of cravings. That is emotional eating. There's a way to indulge yourself and give yourself all of the beautiful ways of celebrating you without that. Maybe it is just a cup of tea. Maybe it is with your favorite fuzzy socks. Again, incorporating the senses. We have our aromatic senses, which is, of course, aromatherapy, but maybe we have our touch and our kinesthetic senses. So fuzzy socks, robes, silk pajamas. How can you luxuriate and bask in your own connection? And there's so many different ways of this, lighting a candle just for your visual senses, or maybe redecorating your room. A lot of times we find comfort in bringing more plants because it gives us a little bit more oxygen, and even redecorating the photos in your room or the pillows and how things are organized in your house. I know that a lot of times at the end of the year, especially if you're navigating life solo, it is a time to purge. It is a time to purge, and that is another way of connecting. And connection can look differently in each arena. So I know we talked so much about how to, navigate loneliness over the holidays. The idea around loneliness, if you are navigating through shifts and change, is reckoning with your emotional abandonment. Because loneliness isn't just about having people around. It's often tied to how, we abandon ourselves emotionally. So what I mean by this is, think of all of the times that you've run away from your emotions or your feelings. And why is it that at the end of the year, we are experiencing the times that we are now having to sit with the big discomfort of perhaps sitting with the awkwardness or the aloneness? And this can also happen with other people. But this can also happen whether it's through your self-criticism, avoidance, or overextending for others. Many times it's during the holidays, and we often disconnect from our inner needs. So I hope this episode has given you a lot of perhaps maybe self-reflection and perspective that many times when we feel alone, even when there's other people, or when we are feeling lonely because we've gone through a lot of shifts and changes and maybe hardships in the past year, it's because either we're carrying a lot of baggage around what is playing out in our minds that we haven't been able to purge, so physically, mentally, spiritually. And oftentimes the holidays might highlight this emotional void, and the emotional void might feel big, that we might be missing something external, when in reality, it's the internal relationship with ourselves that needs nurturing. So, happy holidays. Merry Christmas. I hope that wherever you are feeling and however you are feeling, you take this as a signpost, as a guide, as a way to know that you are worthy, that you have all of the tools at your disposal now to create that inner relationship with yourself, that it's not a need or a void to fill your cup with other things, places, people, materials, but maybe to figure out what makes you feel whole in this end of year reflection season. I will see you next time. If you love this episode, if you think that this episode can certainly serve somebody else during the holidays, please don't hesitate to share this episode. Drop a comment below so this episode can be seen by more and more people. If you are watching this or listening to this on iTunes, we would so love for you, and even on Spotify, to click thumbs up and follow us. It helps us grow the show more than you know. And as always, even throughout the holidays, if we have served you over the last year, I would so love a 5-star review. You can submit that under iTunes. We are growing our reviews, and it helps us grow more than you know to get even more valuable guests in 2025. Thank you so, so much for being here, and I will see you next time.